When we look at all the available ancient manuscripts, the Hebrew Masoretic text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Greek Septuagint, the Aramaic Targums, the Peshitta, the Samaritan Pentateuch, we find variations in how they're written. They don't always agree. Textual criticism is the process of comparing all of these texts, looking for the original wording of the text. While I was doing some studying, I came across a verse that actually gave a pretty good demonstration of the process of textual criticism. And this is Genesis chapter 22, verse 2, which in most translations say something like, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love." Now in the Hebrew text here, what we have is, "Kach et bencha, et yachidcha asher ahavta, et Yitzchak." Now let's take a look at this word for word and translate it literally from the Hebrew. Kach means take. Na means please. Et bencha is your son. Et yachidcha is your only. Asher is who. Ahavta is you love. Et Yitzchak, and that's Isaac. So when we put all this together, literally what we have is, please take your son, your only, who you love, Yitzchak. Now the your only does not have the word son in the Hebrew. That was added in most translations, but it can be interpreted as your only one, referring to the son. The problem with that is that Abraham had more than one son. He had two, Yitzchak, or Isaac, and Ishmael. I've heard many explanations for this wording of the text. However, there is a clue in the Greek Septuagint. Now, the Greek Septuagint is a translation that was done about 2,000 years ago by the Jewish people of the Tanakh, the Old Testament. And when we look at the phrasing in the Septuagint for the Hebrew word yachidcha, your only, we have suton agapeton, which means your beloved. Notice that there's a difference between the Greek Septuagint and the Hebrew Masoretic text. Now, the Hebrew word for your beloved is yadidcha. Now notice that the written form of yadidcha is very similar to yachidcha, the only difference being this little leg on the letter chet. But we must recognize that 2,000 years ago, Hebrew didn't look exactly the same. So here is how the Hebrew looked for yachidcha and yadidcha 2,000 years ago as it would have appeared in the Hebrew text. It would appear that the translator of the Septuagint is looking at a Hebrew text that includes the word yadidcha, meaning your beloved. However, over the centuries, it seems that a scribe mistook the letter dalet for the letter chet and wrote yachidcha. The Septuagint gives us a glimpse of what the Hebrew looked like 2,000 years ago. Now, if we take the word yadidcha, assuming that that was the original wording of the text, we now have, please take your son, your beloved, who you love, Yitzchak. Now, it might be argued that why would the author use beloved and love in the same sentence? Isn't that a little redundant? Well, a couple of things. First, in the Hebrew, they like to use synonyms. They'll often use words of similar meaning. The other thing is that the word yadid means beloved, but more in the sense of passion, while the verb ahav is more related to responsibility. So while they are synonymous phrases, they are very different roots with very different meanings. The point of this exercise is to recognize that ancient texts don't always agree with each other, and the Hebrew is not always correct. Sometimes the Septuagint itself can correct the Hebrew text. Now, this is not an isolated example. There are many, many, many examples of this, and if you're interested, there are several books on biblical textual criticism that are fascinating reads and really opens up the eye to understanding these ancient texts.